All right, here he is, as promised, old friend of the show and Dynasty OG, Mr. Izzy Elkafas of the Dynasty Trade Calculator. Izzy, what's up, man?
What's going on, boys? Glad to be back. I was hoping I'd get an invite sooner than this, but
Well, you guys have been laying low. I know you were just talking before we hit the record button. You've relocated to a new home, and obviously you didn't stop working, but this is one of our favorite episodes, man. This is where we're looking to help people build value, and the tool we're going to use to measure that is yours. So what's going on with the DTC?
not much. I guess we've all been kind of busy. We've been kind of doing a lot of behind the scenes, working on any bugs, trying to get things because we started developing so much with DTC that we there are things that would break along the way that we wanted to address. So we're currently working on fixing some of the things that kind of had gone down or aren't working exactly how we want them to work before we start doing the rest of the other stuff. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I love the. They're not characters. They're not cartoons. They're like artist renderings. Not like a
Yes.
police sketch artist. Jerry's familiar with that world. Don't ask the different question for later. But I love what you guys have going on over there.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we got this. He had. I don't know if you've ever been to our homepage, but our homepage, I guess our podcast page. A gentleman by the name of Shannon, I think it's Smith, Shannon Smith, an Australian guy, actually had surprised us with a sketch of me, Nick, and Hurley, and we had put that on our podcast page, and we had said, "Oh, you know what? We want to do something a little different with our images. Instead of having all the standard images like most people have, we wanted to kind of have somebody draw out every single player in the calculator." So we hit up Shannon and said, "Hey, would you be willing to take on this task?" And obviously, we paid him a handsome sum to do it, but we felt like it was just unique. It was unique enough to do it, and it was like just worth it. Just kind of having your own like created images that you kind of own. I think it's kind of neat.
I will say this. Yeah, this gentleman has done a tremendous job of making Sam Darnold a personal favorite of mine. Look like $1 million, and I noticed that's one of your co-hosts, JP. That's one of his mans, if
Yeah,
you will.
yeah. He's a fan of Darnold.
Well, it's a big club. I'm the president of the Sam Darnold Appreciation Fan Club. But before we get into some players that are going to double their DTC value in our opinions, or going to get their value cut in half, I got to ask you, man. Are you Scott Fishbowl? How's everything rolling? I saw you posted on Twitter that you like your team. You don't love your team. Now, Jerry and I are going to do a full recap of ours next week. But how is your Scott Fishbowl team going through however many rounds?
Yeah, I got sniped along the way. I really want, I have no Austin Eckler in any league just about ever. And I kind of wanted Austin Eckler this year. I think he's going to have a big year if he stays healthy. And I was looking to get Austin Eckler in the third. I started with Josh Allen, and then the running back or the quarterback started flying off the shelves. So I got Stafford as QB 12 or 13, I believe, 11 to 13. I can't remember what it is now. So I want to just lock in my quarterbacks. I feel like every year in Scott Fishbowl, I just try to lock in my quarterbacks and worry about the rest because I just hate stressing out about which quarterbacks are going to make it. So typically I go quarterbacks and I just try to pound running backs because running wide receivers are so deep. You can get some pretty solid ones later. So I started with Josh Allen, Matt Stafford. And then I wanted Eckler. He got sniped right before me. So I took Joe Mixon. And then I got Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the fourth. And then at 509, I got Montgomery. I was going to take Montgomery instead of Clyde. So I actually looked it up. I got Montgomery as the RB23, and nobody else in SFB has gotten him later than RB21. So I got a pretty good deal on him.
That's a tremendous deal on Monty. I was looking at him in the fourth as well, and him and Hilaire and all the guys. I wound up with DeAndre Swift. Now
Okay.
I had Swift last year. He was my, I guess, first RB off the board. But Jerry was sitting here telling me about his quarterback situation. Now Jerry made a mess of his quarterback
Oh
situation.
no, Jerry.
Jerry, you
No,
want to just your quarterback. Save it for next week, but tell us about your quarterbacks. Because one of them is Izzy's favorite. One of Izzy's favorites.
Well, Justin Herbert is fine. Like I took Justin Herbert. I had the 112. I got him. Cool. Thank you. That was an easy pick for me because, like Izzy said, you only know you have a quarterback problem when you have a quarterback problem. And I don't want to have a quarterback problem, so I'm going to keep taking them. I got to the fourth, and it was sort of, the Ben Roethlisbergers, the Carson Wentz, which guy do you want to take? I just took Deshaun Watson. So
Nice.
if it backfires,
What round?
what it's 412. So
it's way early, Jerry.
Yes, way early. I know Randy's in the 8th round talking about taking him right now. But here's the thing. I've either done really well in this tournament or absolute ass. So if it's absolute ass, that's just part of the gimmick. That's just
were you concerned that somebody would take Watson?
Yes and no. The problem is there's guys that are there that I don't really think people are going to take, and I'm fine having. Like, I'm fine having Sam Darnold, or I'm fine having Carson Wentz if he falls, or anyone like that. So, and I have back-to-back picks, so I have the 12-1 loop. I'm definitely going to take one regardless in the next round, so I'll still have Justin Herbert and whoever I take in the, whatever it is, 6-12. Yeah, no, it was risky business, baby. But listen, I've been punting wide receivers. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but if for some reason he gets everything cleared up, and he plays, I've heard everything from no suspension to 6 games to the season. I've been telling myself I lie to myself, Izzy, and say that hey, he tore an ACL in off-season training, so I'm not counting on him in any of my leagues this year. And if I get him back anything earlier than that, it's just a win. That way I'm not frustrated. I'm just not anticipating him this year.
Right. That's a good way to look at it, actually, because you think about it. Look at Joe. Anybody that misses a year, let's say Joe Burrow, let's say Pat Mahomes, let's say Lamar, let's say any of the top 10 quarterbacks blow out an ACL in training camp. Does their value really change? Like, it goes down maybe a little bit. Yeah, but nobody's going to be like Dak Prescott got hurt last year, was out for the season. He still cost a shit ton to acquire.
Yes, he does.
I feel the same way about Watson. I actually agree with you, Randy. Like, I look at it the same way. He's out for a year, and I'd be surprised if he's out longer. Now, if he did all of these horrible things, right? If he did what they're saying he did and more, then yeah, we might be looking at him being out longer than this, or an indefinite suspension. That would be worst case scenario, but it's just really, I find it really hard to believe with the way that Mixon was able to come back, AP was able to come back, Kareem Hunt was able to come back, Zeke was able to come back, Tyreek had his little thing, Big Ben, all these guys were able to come back with video evidence for a lot of them, videos and photos. This is more of like he said, she said. I'd be very surprised if his suspension was longer than those guys.
And you know what's wild is not only will he not actually be coming off of an ACL, but the odds of him being on a better team in 2022. So his value, I mean, he's not one of the guys that I was planning on talking about, but he's a guy that I know you acquired him in the one league you and I are in together, the Ultimate Dynasty Podcasters League. I know that you acquired him. You got him for a really good deal. I got out of him just before this news broke, and then you bought him super, super cheap. And he's going to wind up on a team like Denver, like Philadelphia. Philadelphia is my low-key spot. They've got their own pick. They've got the Colts pick. They've got a pick from the Dolphins in that trade back they did in the draft. So they'll have 3 firsts, and they could even add in their 2023 if they had to give 4 firsts to get Deshaun Watson. And Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and same with Denver. They're all over Rodgers as we speak. So it's going to be good. And we got a Mark McGuire. Not that Mark McGuire because it's not spelled the same way. Mark McGuire with a W was the baseball player. Mark McGuire with a UI is a guy watching on YouTube. Thanks for the support, Mark. And going to jump into this, though, guys. So this is one of the shows, and this is something that's one of my personal philosophies of building dynasties, is that this is the time of the year to either take that last big sellout, that last big cash out window on certain guys. And I'm also looking to acquire guys that can double their value. Now, my guy to double his value last year on this show was my man Terry McLaren, and he did just about that. He went from like 17, I think last year this time was like 17, 18 in the DTC, and now he's worth in the low to mid 30s. So that's how you build equity. That's how you build value in your dynasty roster. And then we're going to look at some guys to lose half their value. That when you look back this time next year, they're going to be worth half what you're acquiring them for right now. Now, Izzy, normally I let the guest go first, but just to make sure Jerry actually did his homework, Jerry, give us your first guy that you think's value will double this time next year.
If you want, I actually did do my homework, so I actually picked a couple in case Izzy took one of mine. But all right. It's sort of a cop-out because I'm lazy, and that's what I do. It's a Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver. I personally am a DJ Chark guy. If it's Laviska Shenault, I'm all about it. I'm not mad about it. You know, the prospect of being tied to a situation with Trevor Lawrence, I think, is very conducive to somebody's value. So even if somebody can get to 1,000 yards, which in the course of 17 games is not an extremely dominant fantasy asset, right? But if they can get that, and then they continue to be potentially a wide receiver one in that offense with Trevor Lawrence, I think their value is going to, I don't want to say skyrocket, but nearly double. So, I got the DTC pulled up right here. DJ Chark is worth 15.6. Laviska Shenault is worth 13.1. So if these guys can hit that 1,000-yard thing, they're going to be right in that Keenan Allen type of value range. Now, I know Keenan Allen's a little bit older of a guy, but I think he's right around 25, 26, 27 points on DTC. It just seems easy to me. And, DJ Chark is not under contract. He's going to be a free agent. So there's a chance that he leaves. But if he can, even show the things that he has shown, he has been pretty productive with just crumb bums and shoe clerks at the quarterback position. So if he can do that with Trevor Lawrence, I do think they'll re-sign him. And if they re-sign him, it's going to be 3 or 4 years with Trevor Lawrence, a young up-and-coming quarterback who by the end of that period is going to be really getting into his prime. DJ Chark's going to be in that sweet zone that Izzy likes to talk about, that age 27 season. He's a big guy. He's a fast guy. I like him, but it could also be Laviska Shenault. He's just not my cup of tea personally. But I could see that too. And both guys are really in that, sort of like Randy mentioned with Terry McLaurin last year, that same sort of value range. Young guys have shown a little bit. You want to see a little bit more, and they are in a little bit of a situation where that is possible. So that was those were my guys.
Oh, I thought you were done. Sorry, Jerry. Izzy, what are your thoughts on Visco?
That makes me feel better.
So I always struggle with the players that Visca seems more of like a weapon than he does.
Cordero Patterson?
No, maybe not Cordero type, but almost like how Percy was used. Okay. Where I don't know if he profiles as like the guy. I'd be surprised if Visco was ever an alpha one. But
he is a wide receiver 37 per Fantasy Pros collective ADP. So
right, but I'm talking as like an actual individual player. Like I don't ever see him being a guy that's going to garner a ridiculous amount of targets. I think he'll get touches, right? I think he'll get enough touches, but as we can all agree, receivers getting touches on the ground, he's very similar in to Debo, where they're going to get manufactured touches, but they're not going to, I just don't ever see him pushing your fantasy team over the top. I think they're really good wide receiver 3s that could sniff wide receiver 2 production. I just don't know if Visca becomes a perennial wide receiver 2, like mid wide receiver 2 that you can count on every single week. I would peg him more of like a low end 2, high end 3, who would be a terrific flex play. That's where your advantage would be. I don't necessarily disagree with Visca increasing in value. I don't think he'll be mid 20s next year. If he's mid 20s, that means he's like a top 3 or 4 round guy.
Sure.
I don't see that happening for a couple reasons. One, his play, like how I see him utilized with Jacksonville, and two, health has been an issue for him. In fantasy and specifically dynasty players, they don't have much patience for injuries, especially if it's a player that gets oft injured. You have to be hyper elite for dynasty players to put up with injuries. If you are an unproven player that's perennially injured, you fall to the wayside pretty quickly. And that's what I worry about with Visco. But I think he's a good player.
It's funny, when I was doing my research, Jerry, first of all, I did look at Visca myself, and everything that you and Izzy have said is very spot on. I closed the window with the Fantasy Pros ADP data, but I don't want to make this so easy to hit, but a guy that I would rather have with a similar profile and what could be a very similar role, but his acquisition cost per the DTC is 3.0 is Paris Campbell. I would rather invest in that, hoping that he can get to 12 or 13 where Visca is, and then move him this time next year. Similar guy, I think they'll play a similar role, both great athletes, gadgety.
One's just a hell of a lot cheaper.
One's just a hell of a lot cheaper on the acquisition cost. And the one thing, I don't want to beat the dead horse of Travis Etienne, but I think Etienne is going to eat into a lot of his manufactured touches. If a lot of this, we're going to use him.
You did that poorly. You did that very poorly, Randy. You could have just said E10 to his production and, for Travis, but it's okay.
You would think after 3 years I would be better at this production.
Well,
thing.
I work with Hurley, you know what I mean? So it's kind of...
It's old hat for you.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, hey, man, while you got the mic, who is the guy that you think will double his value in 12 months? When we're talking in July of 2022, who do you think is going to be worth double what they are today?
Yeah, so for me, it feels like every year we can pretty much find 2 or 3 second-year wide receivers that pop. I can name a few guys that I think that will. The best part about I'll start with the one that I think is almost assuredly has the best chance of doubling in value, and that's Michael Pittman. Randy, you had actually mentioned him in the group chat or a chat between you and I earlier, and he would be my pick for a player that I would pick to double in value. He has the perfect situation, I feel. There is nobody that profiles as the outside, like main head honcho in Indy. Ty would be the guy that would get the most targets in that offense outside of Pittman. He's aged not all that well. I mean, he did come on a little bit at the end of the season, but I think Pittman's there looking at it and saying, there's Paris Campbell. I think Pittman could be a guy that pops off and be the guy. But I'm going to take it a little. My favorite guy to acquire this offseason has been Gabe Davis. Last year, my favorite guy to acquire was Deontay Johnson. This year, my favorite guy to acquire is Gabe Davis. They both had the same acquisition cost this time. Well, Deontay was this time last year. You could get him for right around the price that you can get Gabe Davis. And I think Gabe Davis, he played 74% of the snaps last year. That's with Cole Beasley, with Stephon Diggs, and with John Brown playing spot duty. I know he was hurt most of the season, but he put up a really productive season relative to what you'd expect and relative to the value that he currently has in the DTC calculator and just where he's going in general. So I just don't understand what the issue. I mean, the guy put up 600 yards, had 7 touchdowns as the wide receiver 4 coming into the season. He ended up playing more wide receiver 3. And he's a perfect player for what that offense is. Like, Diggs can take up a lot of the short and intermediate with Cole Beasley, and then you can have Gabe Davis really just stretching the field for this team. He was damn near, what is that? He had about 18 yards per reception last season. So I think if his role expands more than just being a deep threat and being able to stretch the field, and he can add a little bit more polish to his game, I think he's going to easily be worth a high second, early first next year.
Well, I was a big Gabe Davis guy last year, and I'm glad everybody waited to pump his tires until this year because all of my shares are worth more. And I know there's some, Jerry, it's your favorite word, trepidation out there about the bringing in of Emmanuel Sanders.
No.
You know, he feels like a veteran, almost like coach on the field. I love Gabe Davis. The guy I will talk about is Michael Pittman. Now, I shared this podcast with our patrons over at patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. It was The Athletic, the news organization. They have a podcast. It looks like a football shaped like a blimp. And it was one of the guys interviewing Chris Ballard, and they were asking about their lack of attention to the Colts wide receiver group. And to hear him talk about Michael Pittman Jr., I immediately told all the patrons, I'm like, go get him now. You know, I was just looking on Twitter before we started recording and we got the stream going. And I was looking at a video on Instagram of Carson Wentz and all the Colts wide receivers at some training camp in Texas. And guess who's sitting immediately beside Carson Wentz? It's Michael Pittman Jr. What's he worth? He's worth about like 11.5, 12-ish in the calculator.
I think right now, I want to say he's probably in the 13 range, 13, okay. 14 range.
Okay. Just below some of this year's wide receivers.
Yeah, I can see him sneaking in the top 4 rounds next year if he actually becomes what I think he could become in that offense, which is being the wide receiver 1 and hitting 1,000 yards. If he hits 1,000 yards this season and has like 7 or 8 touchdowns, I think he'll be a top 4 round pick next year.
Did I lose you guys?
I'm here. I think we lost Randy.
That's good because he runs the whole thing. All right.
No problem.
So what do you think sort of the narrative is around Gabriel Davis? Like, why do you think that is not, you know, why does the rest of the community not so much buying into it? Is it because Stephon Diggs is there?
I think they are. So, like, I think they're starting to become more into it. And before he doesn't have high draft capital. It's Buffalo. True. He didn't have consistent production last season. He's not your household name. A lot of things it's not like he played for a big name college. So not too many people really know much about Gabe Davis. Honestly, not a lot of Dynasty players have even seen him play. You know what I mean? So He's just not your prototypical sexy expected breakout candidate. But I think as you find guys like myself, like Randy, like other analysts that are starting to pump him up, I think the casuals are starting to jump on board.
And it's funny you mentioned, you don't see him a lot because Buffalo, no, you're going to see a lot of Buffalo in primetime this year. Coming off the season that they're in, being on the East Coast, not a big market, but you're going to see a lot of him. But the last game I remember seeing him was a couple of shots to the end zone where they winded up not connecting with Mr. Allen. So I think Gabe Davis is a steal. I'm going to hit you with mine, and we've kind of touched on some of them. But I wanted to talk about Jalen Waddle initially, but man, I can't see him going from a 16 and change to a 32. But Izzy, this one here is going to blow your mind. But I'm going with Your Mans. If you go to the DTC, they have like a little sliding, I don't know, what would you, like a pop-up? Like, remember pop-up video? Like next to certain players, it'll say things like Twitter darling, hype train, workhorse running back. And on some of them, it'll be certain people's mans. And one of Izzy's mans is Deontay Johnson. Now, I know he's worth 18.5. I know to go from 18.5 would take him to 36. But I think we're going to see things out of Deontay Johnson this year that is just going to absolutely blow the fantasy and dynasty world's mind. Now, that would make him on par with guys like Stephon Diggs in the DTC, a little bit under your Tyreek Hills, but I just, a guy who had like, 140 targets last year. So many targets. And I know the big concern with Deontay Johnson in Dynasty is Big Ben. But Jerry and I have had this conversation. If you're a Jimmy Garoppolo who gets cut in San Francisco, if you're a Jared Goff who gets cut in Detroit, if you're a Derek Carr who gets cut in Las Vegas, why wouldn't you choose the Pittsburgh Steelers? We were talking about the amount of money Dak made being the franchise quarterback for the Cowboys. If there's ever been a place to resurrect your brand, why wouldn't it be Pittsburgh? So I think Pittsburgh will have no problems finding a quarterback And I just think Deontay Johnson is just such an incredible talent. I have been buying him literally everywhere except for the league again that Izzy and I are in. I didn't even bother to send Izzy an offer because I would never be able to offer enough to get him. But I know it's a big jump to move into that top 10-ish wide receivers, but man, I think we're going to see a lot of him. I think this defense is going to take a step back. I think they're going to be passing more than ever. And I just think this is a good young offense. You got Claypool. You got Freiermuth, probably not until next year. You got Najee. They'll be investing in the offensive line in the offseason. I just think that he's going to pop this year, and he's going to be huge. Izzy, can I be a bigger fan of your mans than you are?
I don't know if it's possible. I mean, you're doing a really good job. I don't think he'll double in value for a couple of reasons. He's not young enough to have this sort of doubling at this point in time of his career. Two, he's not a household name like even when guys like Stephon Diggs doubled in value and they went from, where they're struggling in Minnesota, like it was still Stephon Diggs. He's a respected player in the Dynasty community. Deontay Johnson left a bad taste in people's mouths because of the drops, because he's not as polished with his hands like the rest of these guys are, and so on and so forth. So there's a little bit of a stigma with Deontay Johnson that he's not your long-term household name. Now, if he goes out and puts up like a 1,400-yard season, has 110 or 100 receptions, 1,400 yards, or whatever, yada, 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 then sure, maybe. The issue that he's going to have is he's going to need a lot more receptions, just 100 yards, to well eclipse the 1,200, 1,300-yard mark that he's going to need to jump into that top 36 or top 2 rounds to be at valued at 36. And the reason for that is Big Ben is getting the ball out quick. He got the ball out quicker than any quarterback last season. And the reason why Deontay got peppered with targets is he's so good at getting open. Like he's probably one of the better route runners in the league. And he was just separating with ease last season. He was getting the targets. Better than Juju, better than Claypool in that dynamic of the receiver play. So he's going to continue to get those targets this year. The problem is that he's probably going to have a low ADOT and he's going to have a low yards per reception, even though he's really good after the catch. When you're getting that many targets, the likelihood that you're going to continually break big play after big play is unlikely. So he's probably going to be around the 10 to 11 yards per reception range this season. And I don't know if he hits that 1,300-yard mark that he probably needs. What was his yards per reception last year?
I can pull it up real quick.
I'm curious.
Let me ask you a question real quick while I'm getting this information. Do you think that part of the reason why a guy like Terry McLaurin, not that he's not awesome, I mean, I love him. I guess I started to say your boy, our boy, because I love Nick Whalen as much as anybody.
It's 10.5, just so you guys know.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Yeah. Do you think part of Terry McLaurin, not only was he becoming an industry darling in his own right, but do you think the fact that he went to an Ohio State, because when you mentioned what you mentioned about Gabriel Davis, did that also help the fact that he did come from a national power, and that you think that anyway artificially inflated or added a little bit, or is he just that good?
Terry?
Yes.
Yeah, sir. Ohio State, he had a little bit of a following. He had higher draft capital. He had a cool nickname. So
several cool nicknames.
Yeah, so like that's how you get. You're not going to like Deontay Johnson not going to come up with a cool nickname. Gabe Davis, you're not going to come. Terry McLaurin had a lot of cool nicknames. There were people talking about him. And here's the thing with McLaurin is when people were hyping him up, he met the expectations of that. So let's reverse it. Let's say 2 years ago McLaurin was hyped and he struggled, and then he came out last year and had a good season. His value would be substantially lower. Even though he had the same breakout, he just missed when the people were hyping him. He missed the breakout by a year. That's a big part of it. And I think Terry McLaurin is probably one of the bigger sells in Dynasty, not because I don't think he's a good player, but there's a lot of uncertainty after this season at the quarterback position, and he's already 26 years old, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I know. And Deontay's 25, and you're talking about the school because he went to Toledo, if I remember correctly. So not a big school guy, But all right, well, we've got our three guys that we think are going to double their value. I went aggressive. I didn't want to trip over my own feet and say Zach Moss. I think he's going to have a good year too. But Jerry, give us your guy who's going to have his DTC value slashed in half, that you're going to look back a year from now and say, damn it, I wish I'd have moved player who?
I'm going to take an easy one. Deontay Adams. I don't know what the hell Aaron Rodgers is going to do. I don't know if he's going to be there. I don't know if Jordan Love is going to be the guy. He's going to be 29 years old going into next year. If he's even going to be in Green Bay, because he's not under contract and he's not a restricted free agent. So if he goes somewhere new, and let's talk about 29, even if he has a great year, just because he's 29 years old, his value is going to decrease. And we've already seen it. We're at the stages where it's trickling right now. So, he's the wide receiver 1, and then it trickles a couple ADP spots. And then the next thing you know, if he has a 1,200-yard season, good, right? Very good for a wide receiver. You'll be happy you have him on your team. 29, 1,200 yards, potentially a new team. You're going to see his ADP drop to the 3rd round. Maybe the early 4th round, something like that. I could easily see his ADP dropping. Who knows? Whatever kind of darling is going to pop up. Maybe it's a Deontay Johnson. Maybe it's a whoever. Any Jamar Chase. Any of these young guys. Elijah Moore blows up. Whatever it is. He's old and busted. And dynasty players are not about old and busted. They like the new hotness. They like the new shiny toys that they get to look at. I think that's an easy one for me. And even if he gets his value cut in half, still not a useless player. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. I think that's easy for me. I cannot imagine either of you refuting it, but I would love to hear it if you are.
I'll throw it to Izzy first.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this with Julio, but Julio got hurt. It depends on how you're basically in order for him to lose half his value, he would need to have a bad season. So you're basically either saying he's going to have a bad season or he's going to get hurt. So it's hard for me. I don't think he's going to have a bad season. So I'm basically, when you tell me he's going to get cut in half, then you're telling me that he's going to get hurt. Because even though he's turning 29, DeAndre Hopkins is a perfect example of this. DeAndre Hopkins is 29 right now. I'm 99% sure he is. And he's still in the mid-30s. So
he's also got Kyler Murray as his quarterback too.
Right.
But if he's under contract.
True. Yep. I totally get that. But you have to remember too, if we go back to Keenan Allen last year, he was still in the mid-20s and he had Tyrod as his quarterback going into the season. And we weren't sure what Herbert was. Right. And that's Keenan Allen, and that's not Devontae Adams, who's been one of the better receivers in the last handful of years. So
but let's go back to that narrative though. So when we don't know what Justin Herbert is, right? Like we know now Justin Herbert's a dog. At the time we didn't. A lot of people were down on him. Keenan Allen's value was depressed a little. Now that's not to say that it can't jump back up, of course.
Right. Yeah. No, trust me. It's in the realm of possibility, but it would require Aaron Rodgers getting hurt and Jordan Love struggling for Devontae Adams not to be good. Because look at it this way. Devontae Adams comes out, stays healthy, puts up his 90 to 110 catches, has over 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns. He's not going to go from whatever he is in the calculator in the low 40s to low 20s.
20.
He's 42, by the way, 42 and change in the DTC. So that's basically the equivalent of 2 firsts.
Early 30s, probably.
Who's this?
Devontae Adams. Do you think he drops to the early 30s?
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. I think high 20s, early 30s. If he has a decent season, let's say he has a good season, I think he'll still be in the mid 30s. If he has a Amari Cooper type season where it's like, 80 for 1,009 or whatever.
Vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. Then you're probably looking at low or high 20s, mid 20s, due to age, and maybe people think that he's but honestly, it really comes down to injuries, because Adams really hasn't been a durable player throughout his career. So that is definitely in the range of outcomes of him getting hurt and then his value being depressed. Absolutely.
Well, he's not going to get hurt because I stacked him and Aaron Rodgers in the Scott Fish Bowl, so they are leading. They are leading my charge to a Scott Fish Bowl 11 title. No, I agree. A couple other guys that popped up before. Well, actually, Izzy, go ahead and give us yours. That way, I don't accidentally trample on your guy you're cutting in half. Because this always hurts, guys. This is the hard part of saying that you think someone's going to lose value because we like these players.
Yeah. No, I don't just like this guy. He's one of my favorites. Probably top outside of Arian Foster. He might be my favorite running back ever. And the guy that's going to lose half his value next year is undoubtedly Derrick Henry. It's almost guaranteed. He's going to be, believe he's going to end up being a 29-year-old running back, 28 for sure. I'd have to look at his date of birth. I believe he's going to be a 29-year-old running back. And he's currently at a 35 in the calculator. He'll be a 110 range running back unless he has another like 2,000-yard season. But if he does a 1,300-yard, 12 touchdown season, people will still look at his age and he will be a fade because of it. It's almost guaranteed. I would borderline put my life on it. And I love Derrick Henry more than just about anybody.
I know that you do. Too. And we value your life. But no, I agree because remember the one thing that they will try to run the ball and play from ahead. But the only way you're going to run the...
Oh, we lost him again. He gone.
Yeah. Well...
yeah,
as if you.
There he is. He's back. He's back. He's back. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm
Go
back.
Ahead,
yeah, I'm having. I don't know if it's the weather or what. I'm having internet issues here at the house, but I don't know if it's his age so much as it's this team's bad, and this team, its defense. Not only is it bad, but they lost their best corner from last year. I forget his name. He's in the New York Giants. They lost Jadeveon Clowney, who wasn't a huge help, but this was one of I think it was the 29th or 30th ranked defense in the league, and it just got worse. So if this team gets behind early, the game plan of pounding the ball with Derrick Henry kind of goes out the window. And we know he's not a PPR back. And Izzy's absolutely right. What was his touchdowns the last 2 years? Double digits easy both years, right? Like 15? Yeah. Mm-hmm. If he drops down to 1,300 yards and 8 or 9 TDs, it's still a good season. But, man, he is going to be written off at the glue factory. And Jared, can you look up how old he is? Any chance, producer Jerry?
He's 20. He's going to be 28 in January. But that's the number. Once you're 28 as a running back, you're going downhill. So I can't. And here's the thing: 18 is still the value of like the 109, 110, 111 range. So he'll still be valued as a first rounder, but right now he's being valued as, a high first, which is very reasonable. He just came off 2 monster seasons, but he's 27. I mean, age catches up so fast. It's like, he's 28 already. And then once you hit that, the 28 is where the issue becomes real for a running back, where just about nothing you do will prevent you from dropping.
I mean, listen, I had him on my list too. That's an easy one. I mean, the fall off is so real. How you doing, Le'Veon Bell? How you doing, Melvin Gordon? Like we could do this all day. Randy's frozen, and that's an excellent face to be frozen on.
It is. It looks like he's doing some extracurriculars off screen.
Well, now I got 2 Randys, which is
two Randy better than one.
One, yeah. I'll be editing well into the midnight hour, but. What did I miss with some of the Derrick Henry conversation?
Nothing. We were just piling on the big man.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys holding it down. I have no idea. Everything looks good from an operational standpoint. All right, I'll jump into mine. That way we can avoid this happening one more time. Mine was going to be Zeke Elliott, but I feel like that, much like Izzy's call of Derrick Henry, is almost a certainty. He's not as old, but he's been in the league as long. And I think part of it will be Zeke fatigue. I think part of it will be the Cowboys could end up cutting him. They could Todd Gurley his big contract because the salary cap goes up to $208 million next year. They may want to see what they have in Tony Pollard for a few years. So it felt like that one was too easy, but Jerry kind of stole my team, but I went a different player. It's Aaron Jones. 26 years old, going to be 27. Speaking of 26, that is his DTC value in the calculator. And just a guy that I think with Aaron Rodgers coming back this year, you'll be able to use on a contender. But and a lot of these guys were mentioning, especially these older guys, again, what's my litmus test is that if you're a contender, ride these guys and go get a championship. But if you're not a contender, and Jerry, what's the rule? If you have to squint and start making excuses and say, well, if this, and this, then you're not a contender. You're just not. You can look around your league and you can know. So if you're not a contender, I am looking to get out of Aaron Jones. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be in Green Bay in any form or fashion next year. He'll be 27. He'll still be there, but he'll be expensive. And we have no idea what this offense would look like with Jordan Love. So if you're not a legit contender and you can get out of Aaron Jones for a reasonable value, now is as good a time as any. Jerry, thoughts on Aaron Jones?
I'm definitely good on that one. I mean, when we cheated a little bit before, and he told me he was going to pick Aaron Jones, and I said that was a good one. Because I'm with you on that. I sort of like Zeke, though. I got a hard time believing Zeke gets cut in half. I mean, he's only going to be 26.
Is that like a Cowboy thing, you think? If he stays a Cowboy?
I don't know. I think he's going to be productive, too, though. I mean, assuming Dak plays. I mean, he was good while Dak was playing.
I
get the fatigue. He's not sexy because we've been dealing with Zeke for like 38 years. Like, he's just been in the league. But, I mean, he'll definitely lose value. Don't get me wrong. I just think he's still going to be productive. It's going to be a relatively good offense with a poop-ass defense. So they're going to have to score a ton. And I think he's going to be one of the beneficiaries of that. I'm with you on Aaron Jones, though. But Aaron Jones is always sort of that guy that gets like 14 touchdowns, and you get to the end of the season and you look at the rest of the numbers and you're like, oh, okay, he's pretty good. But those touchdowns, man, he's like the opposite of DJ Moore. Like if DJ Moore got Aaron Jones touchdowns, they build statues outside of every fantasy football player's house of the man. So I'm with you. I'm down.
Izzy, now you're in NFC North Country in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. What do you think on my Aaron Jones take?
Yeah, he was number 2 on my list. So I'm definitely with you on that one. I think the fact that nobody in Green Bay ever, no matter the coach, has really wanted to give Aaron Jones the full workload. And now you're adding an extra game, and the coaches that like the committees are only going to committee more. And I think it's going to be A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones splitting carries. I think it's going to be a pain in the ass for fantasy owners. His age is going to surface. That's going to be an issue. And especially if A.J. Dillon – so Jamal Williams, as you guys know, I've had my pin tweet for like 5 years, it feels like. But Jamal Williams is not – he's so average. Do you guys know my pin tweet? Let me pull up my pin tweet.
Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly how I feel about this situation. It is, if you took all of Aaron Jones' strengths and all of Jamal Williams' strengths and you put them in one player, you'd have Aaron Jones. So I don't think Jamal Williams is very good relative to Aaron Jones, and he was still eating into way too much of his workload. I think A.J. Dillon is substantially better than Jamal Williams is. Now, Jamal Williams is good in terms of he's like Frank Gore Jr. in a sense where he's like a poor man's Frank Gore, where he's reliable in pass protection. You can count on him to get you a few yards, but he's not anybody that you're going to ride, to a championship as a team. So I think A.J. Dillon is not as good at as being what you want from like what coaches love. Coaches love what Jamal Williams brings, but A.J. Dillon is far more dynamic as a player. And I think Aaron Jones is also dynamic as a player, and neither of them are really like what the coach would love to have as a running back in terms of being able to pass block and being so reliable and this, and this. And Aaron Jones has cleaned up a lot of those issues, but I think A.J. Dillon is going to be a big issue for him this season. I think it will cut his value in half or close to it.
And don't forget they paid Aaron Jones.
They did.
And at what point do they start treating him like Grandpa's Corvette? Jerry loves this analogy. They only break him out in certain situations and in certain packages because if I've not looked at his dead cap numbers, but if his numbers are a little out of line, they're not going to want to bust him out all the time. And who's going to be the goal line back? And just a lot more negatives than positives in Aaron Jones. But Izzy, we're going to call this one a night, man. Having some technical difficulties, but do you have some more names you want to throw out there?
No, not really. I mean, I think the hardest position is why people should be drafting quarterbacks in superflex leagues. It's really hard to find a quarterback that you can confidently say is going to lose half their value. But the one guy I would probably throw my hat in the ring for to lose half their value is Tua. I won't get too much into it because I wanted to ask you guys a question. I'm on the clock at 6:04. I'm going to give the Dynasty WarZone a piece of this championship, this SFB championship. Who do you guys want me to take here?
Fire away. This is groundbreaking.
Yeah, this is it. So, as you guys know, I have my 3 running backs. I don't mind taking another running back. I think running backs score substantially more points than receivers in this format. Right now, I'm looking at best players available. At running back, it's going to be Javonte Williams. At receiver, it's A-Rod, McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin. At tight end, it's not much of anything. Doesn't look. Maybe Noah Fant is the best.
I will tell you that I took Javonte Williams. I don't remember what round I took him. He is my rookie running back this year. I don't think supplanting speaking of old and busted, Melvin Gordon, I don't think it's going to take long. Now, my goal is in this to go back later and circle back around and try to pick up Melvin Gordon. And that way I have the entire, somewhere around round 10, 11, whatever. If Melvin Gordon's still floating around there, then I can pair him up kind of like a now and later. I may have to play Melvin as my RB2. And Melvin didn't have a bad end to the year last year. I love the draft capital. I think Javonte Williams, I've said this before, he's my 2021 version of what Jonathan Taylor did last year and Miles Sanders did 2 years ago. He's the rookie that'll start off a little bit slow. People will get a little bit pissy about, but coming down the back end, like the last 8-9 games, he's just going to assert himself. I love the draft capital. I think he was top 40, if I remember correctly, and Denver traded up to get him. Just very reminiscent of what I've seen of those guys, and I think Javonte Williams is going to be a league winner. That's my opinion. Jerry?
So your running backs are pretty insulated. You already have a couple. So what's your take on going Javonte Williams or possibility of going with a rookie running back? Like, is it something you would even consider?
Well, yeah. I mean, in SF, I look at the receiver landscape. One, it's super deep. And two, they don't score that many points because it's half PPR and then it's point per first down. So you're really not scoring a crap ton of points. Running backs are going to dominate this because they get so many more opportunities to get first downs by running the ball and catching the ball at that. So it's like you can never have too many running backs in this SFB format. And I can get so many more receivers than I can. And at running back, it's a war of attrition, right? So odds are you draft 3 running. I drafted Mixon, Clyde, and Monty. Odds are one of them is getting hurt for sure, right? At some point in time, maybe even 2.
And you got to start 11. And you got to start 11 players.
You got to start 11 players. Yeah. So it's like it doesn't hurt having that many running backs. I was leaning initially Javonte Williams because I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing a lot of good options after.
Who else would you go? Is it CeeDee Lamb?
So
that's the guy that if I didn't go that.
Yeah. So the guy that I kind of want to take because I think he's going to have a big season. He was off to a ridiculously good start last season with Dak. Is CeeDee Lamb. So if I go receiver, I think my gut was telling me to go with CD. But to give you an idea, with the running backs versus the receivers, if I go to running backs here from last season in this format, James Robinson scored 18.5. Melvin Gordon scored almost 15. Kenyon Drake was 14.2 on average. Ronald Jones was 14. David Johnson in Houston was 16. to put in perspective, all those names are scoring right around 15 points per game. If I go look at the receivers, Allen Robinson, 15, Tyler Lockett, 15, Thielen, 16, Mike Evans, 15, Robert Woods, 14. Like the running backs that are complete crap are still outperforming or at least up to par with the receivers that are household names. So
I'm going to try to sneak in. You mentioned a wide receiver on a crap team. I'm going to try to pick up Phillip Lindsay late in this thing as well. And I'm hoping none of the Kanye West division are listening to this particular podcast. But man, I'm with you. In this format. I've learned this because how many years in a row have you been in the fishbowl? Izzy? 6?
I think 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah. This is 4 or 5 for me. And one thing I've learned is, and this is a practice I implemented this year, is I stopped drafting players and I'm just drafting points. It's why I went Dak, and when Aaron Rodgers came all the way back to me at the 207, I was like, he was the number 1 point per game producer in this format. So in the first 3 picks, I took Dak, I took Rodgers, and those guys combined are going to average about 80.
This boy's playing this podcast on the moon. Listen, I haven't picked a wide receiver, so my opinion is going to be biased. I am probably not going to take CeeDee Lamb, and I'll take somebody else if I'm in your shoes. But I'm also the guy that took Deshaun Watson, so why the hell would you listen to me? But
yeah, right. I think I'm going to lean. I'm going to, like I said, my gut was going Javonte Williams. Might be a touch early for him. I don't think he'll come around though if I pass on him now.
Like you're probably gonna want. So you said you think that one will get hurt, which is almost a certainty, at least for a chunk of time. So you're gonna want some more people. So like, let's say you don't take Javonte Williams and you want to take another running back later. Ballpark, who are we looking at there? Like, we're not to like the dregs. We're not like trying to pick Kenny Gainwell, but it's still probably not anything great.
After him?
Yeah, like in the next 12 picks or whenever you got to pick.
I got to pick in, what is that? Almost a round and a half, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like I'm probably gonna be left with like, yeah. And then I'm looking at like David Johnson's, Damian Harris's, that group. I'm gonna try to get a guy like Gus Edwards later. But yeah, it gets so light after Javonte Williams. Even though I don't even know if he's gonna be the guy, and I'm not a huge Williams fan.
I mean, I'm not either, but I mean, you have other guys that can hold that for the little bit that you need it too. So if he does emerge later on, you're not relying on him in the first month. You're trying to win the league with Javonte Williams later. I don't want to sell you. I'm not trying to sell you. I did it.
I did it.
Man.
Javonte Williams. He's sold. He's on the team. Now we got 4 solid running backs here. Now we just pound receiver and then see where it takes us.
Have you gone tight end yet? Sorry, I don't remember your team.
No, I have Allen, Stafford, Clyde, Mixon, Montgomery, and Williams.
Oops. Okay.
You just a hell of a lineup.
What's that?
So that's a hell of a lineup.
Yeah. I'm going to fade tight end because right now the best one available is Fant, who I don't mind Fant, but
right.
At this point, I looked at the scoring for tight ends. It gets so bunched up after the top 3. So basically in SFB, if you don't take the top 3 tight ends, you're just better off waiting. So that's what I'm doing.
And that's what we were talking about before we got you in the stream, was that most of the guys left in mine, they all score 13 points a game in this format. Yeah, so I'm gonna wait and get one of those dudes, and then I'm gonna take a big swing at a Tyler Higbee, at a Gerald Everett, guys like that, and stack 2 or 3. Because if you wind up having a stable option and one of these other guys really pops with, Gerald Everett being gone in L.A., it could be a big boon for Tyler Higbee. We saw that little run that set the fantasy world on fire. So those are the kind of guys that I'm looking to jump on.
Yep. No, I'm with you.
Well, awesome, man. Well, listen, I'm sorry for the internet issues.
No, it's good.
I think I'm going to have to strangle a 13-year-old. Because I think he's up there live streaming games, and that's the price you pay when the kid's home from from school on summer vacation. But dude, good to hear your voice. I know you guys been laying a little low on the DTC.
Yeah, it's just more Twitter. I mean, Twitter's like become it's not what it used to be. And I don't want to be like the old head that say, "Oh, back in my day, Twitter was different." It's just a different group of people. Like my timeline is just filled with the same, 8 to 10 people, and it's just not. It's not like the guy, the pure guys like it was back in the day. Yeah, I don't want to be the old guy, so I'm not going to.
I know.
Yeah,
I just haven't. I don't know. I haven't. I feel like the old guy, like myself, like guys, like nobody really wants to hear my opinion anymore. Like, just kind of one of those things. So it's not like, oh, woe is me. It's just I don't think it's the juice isn't necessarily worth the squeeze for me to tweet as much as I might. I might get back into it, but I'd rather just focus on the site, let these new cats do their thing, and then, if I have a good take here and there, I'll drop it in. But
well, you've always got a good take now and then, and one thing you're damn sure not going to do is out-talk them. But I'm glad you jumped on tonight and talked with us. But guys, make sure you're checking out the Dynasty Trade Calculator. Izzy's been a friend for a really long time, but it is not the end-all, be-all. I know for newer Dynasty gamers, it's a must. And it's a must. And maybe you don't like the DTC, you're wrong, but that's cool. Maybe it's not for you, but use something. Use something as more and more people like the fantasy footballers continue to do more Dynasty content. The ESPN guys with Matthew Berry do more Dynasty content. If you're a newer Dynasty gamer that happened to stumble upon the Dynasty WarZone, I implore you to find tools and resources to help you be better. Because you're going to run into a lot of sharks, a lot of people that have been playing for a really long time, and at least it gets you in the ballpark, right? It's your ticket to admission to keep you from getting killed in what could otherwise be a horrible trade. Does that sound like a fair use for it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's spot on. If you're new, it's good to make sure that you're not getting raked over the coals.
You're old.
And if you're old, it's a good way to start negotiations or a barometer to put together good trades.
That is how I still use it to this day. I've been playing Dynasty for more years than I care to admit. But I still look at it before I send that offer. And I don't mind losing an offer. I've talked about this with the calculator before. I'll lose by 5%. I'll lose by 10% if I believe that a guy's going to move up or down in value or he's going to fit my particular roster. But it just certainly helps you from giving away a ton of value, especially in Superflex. If you don't have those quarterbacks locked down, you're in big trouble. But Izzy, man, thank you so much for jumping on. And I know this is early in the evening for you. If you're watching on YouTube, also sorry for the technical difficulties, but it went from daylight to dark in the land of Minnesota, aka Canada South.
I had to turn my lights on.
He had to turn the lights on. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you jumping on with us. Jerry, anything?
No, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, boys.
We talk about the DTC whether you are here or not. It is
That's
a tool
right.
that we use. It is a tool that we promote damn near every single episode because it's a great tool. And you're just a good dude to talk with. You think theoretically, and it's something that you don't see on timelines, which is probably what you're talking about when you say it's not the same group.
Yeah.
And that's why I like talking to you. That's why I like following you. That's why I liked interacting with you. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
you make me smarter when I hear you talk.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Because I listen to Randy every other time, dumb as a box around. So
Randy's he's come a long way. Randy's up there now. At first Randy was a little shaky. Like, hey, Randy,
I'm still a little shaky.
No, you're definitely with it for sure. So, you guys know what you're talking about. I appreciate you guys always promoting our stuff. Randy, obviously, I talk to you more than Jerry. We talk a lot because we're in leagues together. But I've always been a big fan of you. You've always been good for the community. So I appreciate you guys having me on and happy to jump on whenever.
Well, I love it, man. Great to hear your voice. Great
we'll
to
see
talk
you guys
to you.
in a month, maybe.
We'll be there. No, we're not staying. Yeah. We're not staying. We'll fill everybody in on the Canton FF Fantasy Football Expo. But until next time, his name is Izzy. You can follow him at DTC_IzzyE. You can follow Jerry at JerrySinDWZ. And you can follow me at DWZ Memphis. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll catch you back here real soon. The old Jerry finger wave.